Good morning, my friends. We continue in learning our daily chapter in Rambam, where we will be learning the map, the setup of the entire set of Rambam, all the 14 volumes. So today we're going to be learning the next couple books of the Rambam, where the Rambam will be telling us what these books are all about and what is every book comprised of. So join along as we figure out and we learn what the Rambam's books are all about. We come up to the next book, which is the book of holiness, Sefer Kedusha. In this book, there are a few parts, as we said. Every book has sub headings, sub parts of different laws which are being discussed. So in this book we have 3 parts of laws. We have the laws, number 1, the laws of forbidden intimate relations, and where it discusses all the laws of the forbidden marriages which a Jew and also a non-Jew is allowed to get married. So there are certain ones that is for all of humanity, and then there are also specific relations and relationships which a Jew specifically is not allowed to have, as we listed them out when we were listing out all the mitzvot. And there are certain relationships that it is improper and not holy and immoral, as God lists them out in the Torah, and the Rambam has listed them out for us. The second set of laws over here are not the laws of marriages that are forbidden, but rather foods that are forbidden for consumption. So these are the laws of forbidden foods, where we talk about the laws of kosher. So there's a kosher marriage and there is a kosher food. And the last part is discussing the laws of shechita, which is the laws of ritual slaughter, which, because he's speaking about the laws of kosher food, one of these important elements in kosher meat and chicken is how it is slaughtered and how it is prepared, and it has to be in a very specific form. So he discusses the laws of shechita, which are actually very interesting laws, and knowing you learn a lot about an animal and what the animal is made of, all the various parts of the animal, and exactly what one has to be careful when the animal is being slaughtered to make sure that it is kosher. And that's not something which just by studying it you can know exactly what to do, but rather you actually have to go and learn it from someone who is an expert, and then they'll teach you exactly how to do it. I personally haven't studied it hands-on, but I actually have a few friends who have studied this, and they have their special knives, and they learn how to sharpen them. It's a very interesting process. This is the book of Kedusha, of holiness. Now we move on to the next book, which is the book of Hafla'ah. Hafla'ah is the book of utterances, in where it talks about all the various vows, etc., that a person can take upon himself, and he has to listen and follow to what he has taken upon himself. So within this, there are actually 4 subcategories, 4 sets of laws, in where he discusses 4 categories of times and ideas of a person who takes upon himself a vow. So the first one is the law of oaths. So that's the first and basic concept of someone saying something verbally that has a very strong importance, is an oath, which, as we learn, has a very heavy weight in Jewish law. When we do an oath in the Bet Din, etc., in the Jewish court, so we actually do it. I mean, today it's not in the same form, but it's a very, very important and special procedure where a person will take an oath in the name of God, and he holds the Torah scroll, and it's a very solemn moment. and then we have to make sure that we don't, God forbid, say something which is not true. Then we have the laws of vows, which is a person on his own which takes upon himself a vow, and he says that I will not do XYZ, or I will do something, a certain action. So then he says that I will wake up every morning and study for X amount of time. So that's something which he took a vow upon himself. And if he doesn't, and if for whatever reason he cannot follow and live up to this vow, so then he has to have the vow nullified. And there's a whole procedure how to go to have 3 rabbis, and you say the vow in front of them, and they ultimately will nullify it for the person. The next part of this book is the law of a Nazirite, of a Nazir, as it's called in Hebrew, where we have a person who takes upon himself, which is actually a type of vow, where he says that he's going to be a Nazir, a Nazirite, and he therefore ultimately he's now not allowed to do certain things. He has a certain sense, a certain level of holiness, and this is included in this book. And the last set of laws in this book are the laws of endowment evaluations and devotion offerings, which are really when a person wants to give a gift to God based on the certain value of an object or of a person. So he says, I want to give the value of myself or the value of someone as a gift to God. So then we have to learn how much a person is worth, how much a house is worth, how much property is worth, etc. And if it's a house, or if it's a field, or if it's an animal, all the various details of this law. And the Rambam discusses all the details in the book of utterances. And this book contains a total of 25 mitzvot. The next book is the book of agriculture. So we're talking about all the laws that are regards to a field. So it's actually, there's a lot of laws. It's quite a thick book because in Judaism, the laws of the field of agriculture take a very strong place. It was something which Jewish people have always been involved in, all the way till today. In Israel, we find agriculture is a very strong part of life, and it always has been. So there are 7 halachot, 7 sub-categories in this book, and they are as follows. The first of all is the law of the halachot of kilayim. Kilayim literally means to mix. So we are not allowed to mix species one with another. So if, let's say, we're planting oranges, we're not allowed to plant oranges together with apples in one, so that we should have an orange apple tree that will grow out of it, where you will be mixing these 2 types. So those are the laws of kilayim, and it's actually quite complicated laws, where we learn exactly the measurements of how far it is supposed to be, and what exactly is counted as 2 different types, and what is counted as 1 type, etc. If it's an orange and a blood orange, are you allowed to have them together? Or, things like that. But those are all discussed in these laws. The next part is the laws of gifts that are given to the poor. So one of the gifts that we have to give from our produce, from the things that we grow in our fields, and not only from produce, but even just in general from our business, from things that we acquire, we have to from our profit, we have to give a gift to the poor. Then we have the laws of teruma, which is this applies specifically to agriculture. So if a person has a field and he has wheat, barley, etc. that's growing in his field, he has to take a part of that and give it to the priest, to the Kohen. Then we have the laws of maaser, which are the laws of the tithes, which is the 10th, which that goes to the Levite. So once he gets everything and he brings it into his house, and he knows exactly in his storehouse how much he has to take 1/10 of all of that and give it to the Levite. Then we have the laws of the 2nd tithe and the produce of the 4th year, which are allowed to be eaten. One is allowed to eat it himself, but it has to be in Jerusalem, and those are discussed in these laws. The next laws in this book are the laws of the bikurim, which are the first fruits. If a person has a tree that's growing in his field and he has on it pomegranates that are growing, let's say, and he's in the land of Israel, so he will look out in the spring when the first pomegranates are starting to grow, and he'll take it. There's a special mitzvah how you're supposed to take a red ribbon and tie it around the first fruit, very, very small. It's just a flower that's starting to grow, so you know that this is the first fruit that grew, and ultimately you take it once it grows and it becomes a full ripe fruit, and bring it as a gift to God. And then the last set of laws in this book are the laws of the Shemitah, which is the sabbatical year, and the Yovel, which is the Jubilee year, exactly how that all works. And the Rambam discusses it and gives us a full picture and understanding of exactly how this all works. So within this book, there are 67 mitzvot. 30 of them are positive, 37 of them are negative commandments, and all of that is included in the book of agriculture. The next book is the book of Avodah, which is the service in the temple. So in this book there are 9 subcategories, and they are as follows. Number 1 is the laws of the chosen house, God's chosen house, which is the temple. So these are the laws describing and telling us the laws of what is a temple, how it's supposed to be built, etc. The next part of the laws are the laws in regards to the temple's utensils and those who serve within the temple. So we're talking about the various utensils that were in the temple, for instance, the menorah and the special table where the bread was brought, the altar, and so on and so forth, as well as those who worked in the temple, who served God in the temple, which are the Kohanim, the priests, the Leviim, the Levites, etc. The next set of laws are the laws of entering the temple. Who is allowed to enter the temple? How is one allowed to enter the temple? There's a certain procedures, there's a certain prerequisites, etc. How one is able to come into the temple, where he's allowed to go if he comes to the temple, so on and so forth. All of that is discussed in these laws. The next laws are the laws governing animals that are forbidden to be sacrificed on the altar. So certain animals were allowed to be brought onto the altar. Certain animals were not allowed to be brought as a sacrifice on the altar. Namely, they were not kosher, and also if they had a blemish, and the Rambam discusses exactly the details of how all of that works. The next set of laws are the laws of the sacrificial procedures, which is literally telling us how exactly sacrifices were brought in the temple, what exactly was entailed, how was the procedure, and how were all these sacrifices brought. The next set of laws are the laws of the daily sacrifices and the special offerings, which were brought on holidays, on Shabbat, etc. The next laws are the laws of offerings that have become unacceptable for sacrifice. So I guess we would say that the first set, which was talking about those that are forbidden to be sacrificed, are discussing certain animals that are not allowed. Now we're discussing an animal which might have at one point been allowed, but now it has become unacceptable, and because it has a blemish or other reasons that it would not be allowed to be brought as a sacrifice. The next laws are the laws regarding the Yom Kippur service. So in other words, we spoke about the daily and the special offering that were brought on holidays, but Yom Kippur had a whole set for itself. It was the most special day of the calendar in their temple. It was a very busy day. It was a very busy time in the temple, and there was a lot going on, and we have a special set of laws only describing what took place then. And the last set of laws are the laws of Me'ilah, as it's called, which is the misuse of sacred property that belonged to the temple, that we have to be very careful. If we have an animal which has become holy, we have given it as a donation to God, to the temple, we have to take very much care of it and not to misuse it, God forbid. Okay, so now we come up to the next book, which is the... One second, we're just getting down here. Here we go. The book of sacrifices themselves. So in the first book, we were talking about the various laws of the temple and the sacrifice that were brought on a communal level. Now we're talking about the book of sacrifices is talking about a person he has to bring a sacrifice on his own, in his own right. So as we're going to see, there are the laws, the first set of, and in this book there are 6 sets of halachot, six categories. The first one is the laws of the Korban Pesach, which is the sacrifice of the Passover offering, which was brought. So every single Jew had a part within the Passover sacrifice, and they would bring it the day before Passover, and it was prepared, and etc. So this is a sacrifice that every individual had to bring on their own. The next law is the sacrifice that every person would bring for every festival. But again, it wasn't a communal sacrifice that was brought just by the priests in the temple, but rather every individual had to bring his own animal as a sacrifice in honor of the festival, and he would get some meat and be able to eat it at home. The next laws are the laws regarding the firstborn animals. So that, again, as we said, the firstborn animal is supposed to be given as a gift to God. So he discusses the laws of those. And the next laws are concerning the offerings for atonement of unintentional sins and transgressions. So a person who, God forbid, by mistake did a sin, now he has to ask forgiveness and he has to bring a sacrifice to God as a sign of repentance for his mistakenly done sin. And so he discusses those laws over here. Then we have the laws of those whose process of atonement is incomplete. So we have certain certain sins that you do teshuvah, you repent for them, and technically your teshuvah is complete now, but there is a certain process in where the person would bring a sacrifice, another type of sacrifice, in order to complete his atonement. And the last set of laws in this book in regards to sacrifices are the laws of offerings which were substituted one for another. So if you had, let's say, one animal which was supposed to be brought as a sacrifice, but you actually really love this animal and you wanted to keep it for yourself, and now you have another animal which this one you don't really care much for, so you say, you know what, let's swap it over. Let's say this one's going to be mine and that one's going to become God's. We're not allowed to swap over the animals, and it's a sin. And the truth is that the Torah says that if we do it, then they actually both become holy. So that is the end of the book of sacrifices. And God willing, tomorrow we will be learning the last couple books of the Rambam, and we will learn the map of those last couple books to understand what the Rambam is all about in detail, to understand how this entire 14-volume set works, so that when we come down to it and we actually study and we are trying to figure out a certain idea, we'll know, oh, that book discusses this concept, that book discusses those laws, etc. So, have a very good day. We will be in touch, God willing, tomorrow for the next part of studying Rambam. Have a good day.